Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My sister slammed my door open and dropped a baby on me. No hello, no warning, just a wailing bundle and shaking hands. Hold her, she pushed the weight against my chest and backed away. I grabbed the kid before she slipped, heart hammering in my throat. I was 29 and my name is Alex, and I had no plan. Watch her for a bit, okay? I just need to go. My sister paced near the doorway, chewing at a cracked thumbnail. The baby screamed like someone had hit an alarm inside my skull. Go where? What happened? Why is she crying like that? She wouldn't look at me, and that should have told me everything. I'll explain later, just rock her, she likes that, I swear. She shoved a diaper bag near my feet and avoided my eyes. I just need a few hours, please, Alex, I swear I'll be back. My arms already ached, and I had no idea how babies worked. I opened my mouth to argue, and the hallway swallowed her instead. The door slammed, and the baby jerked and screamed even louder. For a second I just stood there, frozen, holding this tiny stranger. Her face turned red, fists balled, lungs working like a siren. I tried bouncing her a little, like in some random movie. Nothing changed except my panic, which climbed higher with every breath. Okay, hey, you're fine, you're okay, I got you, relax. My voice shook and I knew she did not care at all. I checked the diaper with one clumsy hand and almost dropped her. The diaper was soaked, warm against my palm, and I swore softly. I had never changed one before, and that hit me hard. I laid her on the old couch and tried to breathe slowly. She kicked and flailed, tiny legs frantic, face still a mess. Please stop moving, kid, I am trying, I actually am. I tore open the diaper, wiped the wrong way, cursed, tried again. By the time I finished, there were wipes everywhere and my hands shook. She kept crying, so loud my head felt split down the middle. I lifted her again, held her against my shoulder, patted lightly. Her tiny body fit along my chest like she belonged there. That thought scared me more than the crying, if I am honest. I started pacing the room, because standing still made me feel trapped. Come on, you have to eat, right? That is a thing. I dug through the diaper bag, tossed aside clothes, found powdered formula. A bottle rolled out after it, thank God, already washed and dry. I read the instructions 3 times, lips moving, brain lagging behind. Every step felt like diffusing some small bomb I never asked for. I fumbled with the water and powder, hands clumsy and unsteady. She wailed on the couch, arms windmilling, face screwed tight with rage. 1 minute, I hear you, I promise, just one more second. I shook the bottle, screwed the cap, tested the milk on my wrist. It felt warm enough, and honestly I was past careful at that point. I pulled her back into my arms and pushed the bottle closer. For a second she fought it, jaw clenched, lips refusing to open. Then something clicked inside her, and she latched on like a vacuum. The silence hit so fast my ears actually rang from leftover noise. I leaned against the wall and slid down, legs finally giving out. I watched her drink, eyes half closed, swallowing like this was routine. For her it probably was, for me it felt like a test. Her hand rested against my shirt, fingers flexing with each slow gulp. I remember thinking this was almost peaceful, almost easy, almost normal. I should have known anything that quiet was a trap waiting ahead. My phone buzzed on the table, sharp against the fading tension. I shifted her carefully on my arm and reached for it slow. One message from my sister, 3 words, no explanation, no apology. Just a while, that was it, nothing about where or why. I stared at the screen and felt my stomach drop through the floor. I called her right away, thumb hitting the contact without thinking first. The call rang and rang, then straight to voicemail, no hesitation, nothing. Call me back now, this is not funny, I am serious. My voice sounded tight and older, like someone else had taken over. I hung up and tried again, because denial is easier than fear. No answer, again, same deadline, same recorded greeting. I looked at the baby, who was now dozing against my arm. She will be back, I told her, like the kid could judge me. I needed that sentence more than she did, if I am honest. I said it twice, and each time it sounded thinner and weaker. The bottle slipped from her mouth, a thin line of milk trailing. I wiped her chin with my sleeve because I did not care. Her eyes fluttered, then closed, her fists loosening near my collar. I did not own a crib or blankets or anything for babies. I laid her on my bed and pretended that counted as enough. I stood there watching her, waiting for something to go wrong instantly. I expected choking or sudden crying or some disaster I could not fix. Every small breath she took made my own breath tighten in my chest. You know that feeling when a room is quiet but you feel hunted? That is exactly how it felt, like I had stolen time from fate. I tried calling our mom, finger hovering, then I locked the screen. They had not spoken in months, and I knew how that would go. She would ask questions I could not answer and judge every word. Why did you let her leave? What were you thinking? Where is she? I could hear it already, and I was not ready for that fight. Instead, I texted my boss and lied about food poisoning and fever. Cannot move, probably contagious, need tomorrow off, really sorry about this. It was easier to sell a fake illness than a surprise baby. I hit send and stared at the message, hating the quick deception. That was the first clean bridge I burned for a kid I barely knew. The night stretched long and tight, every small sound turning me rigid. She woke up twice screaming, tiny body arching, hands searching the air. I changed another diaper with the speed of a slow hostage negotiator. My back hurt, my eyes ached, my whole life felt off balance. Each time she calmed against my chest, something inside me dug in deeper. Around dawn, my phone finally lit again with her name on it. My heart jumped, stupid hopeful, like I was about to be rescued. The message was longer this time, but somehow worse than the first. Need time, stuff is complicated, please handle her, I know you will. No mention of where she was, no plan, just that blind faith. I wanted to throw the phone, to scream, to drive around yelling. Instead, I stood in the kitchen and read the text 5 times. Handle her, like the baby was a package, not a human life. Like I was a temporary locker, not a brother with his own mess. I replied anyway because part of me still believed she would return. When are you coming back? She needs you, I cannot do this. I waited with the phone in my palm, screen glowing, pulse racing. The typing dots popped up once, then vanished, then nothing, total silence. I stared until my eyes blurred, then set the phone face down. I knew even then, the dots meant she had chosen to disappear. The baby started fussing in the next room, soft at first. I went back and found her kicking, face scrunched, lips trembling. Hey, yeah, I hear you, I'm still here, relax. I picked her up and she buried her head under my chin. That one small movement felt like a verdict I had not agreed to. I walked the apartment with her, slow circles, counting each step out loud. It was something to keep my brain from spinning into worst cases. 1, 2, 3, 4, over and over, a stupid rhythm but steady. Her breathing matched mine eventually, both of us worn out and shaky. I remember thinking this was supposed to be a one-night emergency. Around mid-morning, I opened my banking app and winced at the numbers. Formula, diapers, some decent doctor check, all of that cost money. I did not have anyone to split this with, no partner, nothing. I closed the app fast, like maybe that could pause reality for now. I told myself it was fine, that I would get reimbursed later. I dragged the old futon from the spare room closer to my bed. In my head, this was still temporary, just rearranging for convenience. But when I laid her down beside a folded towel as a pillow, when I tucked a spare hoodie around her like a blanket substitute, it looked less like a guest setup and more like a tiny home. She stared at me while I moved, eyes wide, almost suspicious. I know that is projection, she was just a baby, barely aware. Still, it felt like she was checking if I would vanish too. I sat down on the floor so we were at the same level. Your mom is coming back, I said, and even I did not buy it. I took a picture of her and sent it to my sister. No caption at first, then I added, she is okay for now. I waited again for an answer that never showed up. The message stayed delivered, not read, like a door left half open. That was the moment I started to understand I was alone in this. By evening, I had learned how to mix a bottle without thinking. I changed diapers faster, wiped better, held her with more confidence. I hated that I was getting good at something I never wanted. My brain kept whispering that she would show up and take over. My hands kept learning anyway, like they knew a different story already. When the second night hit, I opened a shopping app, angry and tired. I scrolled through baby stuff I did not know how to pronounce. A cheap crib sat near the top, plain, nothing special, just functional. I hovered over the buy button, thumb shaking, heart pounding like crazy. Ordering it felt like signing a contract no one had offered me. I told myself it was just for safety, that was it, nothing more. Babies needed proper beds, that was a fact, not an emotional choice. I put in my address, checked the total, winced, and hit confirm. Somewhere in that smell, digital click, my life tilted without asking permission. I did not know it then, but that crib was me saying yes. My niece launched a spoonful of oatmeal straight at my chest. It slid down my shirt while she laughed from her booster seat. Again, she banged the tray with both hands like this was sport. I grabbed a towel, wiped myself off, tried not to lose it. That was the exact second someone pounded on my front door. My stomach clenched before I even moved toward the hallway. Back then, every unexpected knock felt like a bill or bad news. "Stay there, do not climb out," I pointed at her wiggling legs. She grinned like I had told the best joke in the world. The knocking came again, harder, like whoever it was refused to wait. I opened the door and almost forgot how to speak for a moment. My sister stood there with a swollen belly and a stranger beside her. Her smile looked rushed, painted on, eyes already scanning my place. Surprise, she lifted her arms like this was some fun reunion. Behind her, the guy shifted his weight, studying me like a problem. I leaned on the frame so I would not step back instinctively. Last time I saw her, she had vanished faster than a missed call. Now she was here with another child on the way and backup. "You going to invite us in, or just stare all day?" Her voice had that joking edge she used whenever she wanted something. Before I could answer, tiny footsteps slapped across the floor behind me. "Daddy," my niece barreled into my leg and grabbed my jeans. She peeked around me, looked straight at my sister, and hesitated. Then she shoved her face against my thigh like she was hiding. The new guy clocked that, eyebrows lifting just enough to sting. My sister laughed too loudly and crouched with open arms. "Hey baby, look at you, you got so big, wow." My niece did not move, fingers dug into the fabric at my knee. "You remember me, right?" My sister stretched the smile until it shook. The kid peeked again, then murmured something that sounded closer to no. The guy cleared his throat and stepped forward with a stiff grin. "Hey man, I am Trevor, real good to finally meet you." His handshake was firm, a little too firm, like a sales pitch. I gave my name, even though he obviously already knew it. His gaze dropped to the toddler hugging my leg like a shield. "So this is her," he nodded at my niece, then glanced at my sister. "She is adorable, we are going to be like one big unit." The words scraped across me in the worst possible way. I forced my jaw to unclench and stepped aside from the doorway. "Come in then," I muttered, already regretting that small invitation. They walked in like they belonged there, like nothing bad had happened. My niece watched every step they took, eyes wide, thumb in her mouth. My sister kissed the top of her head without asking permission. "You grew up good, see, I told you Uncle Alex had it handled." Handled, that choice of word hit me harder than she probably meant. She dropped onto the couch with a groan, rubbing her back slowly. Trevor stayed standing, scanning my place like he was planning renovations. "So here is the situation," my sister started, already lifting her hands. I felt my shoulders tense because nothing good ever followed that phrase. My niece climbed into my lap and pressed herself tight against my chest. "I'm due in a few months, stuff has been tough, money is tight." She spoke quickly, barely breathing between each explanation and excuse. "We thought maybe we could all stay here for a bit, share things." Trevor nodded along like a background actor placed to approve everything. His eyes kept sliding over to the high chair and the stack of diapers. I stared at her belly, then at the man, then at the kid. My brain started doing quiet math I did not want to admit. Beds, food, bills, my job already stretched as far as it could stretch. "How long is a bit?" I asked, trying to sound neutral, not panicked. My niece traced circles on my arm like she could feel the shift. "Until we get set up," she answered, too fast, too bright, too rehearsed. "I got interviews lined up, he has some promising leads, we are close." Trevor nodded again, mouth tight, hands resting on his belt loops. We just need a landing pad, family helps family, right? That last line landed like a joke I was not allowed to decline. Truth is, part of me wanted to throw them out immediately. Another part kept noticing how my niece kept stealing glances at her. Mom, she whispered once, testing the word like it might be wrong. My sister's eyes filled so quickly, it almost knocked my anger sideways. I hated her and I also wanted her to do better, both at once. I told them they could use the spare room near mine. The decision came out of my mouth before I fully weighed it. My niece clapped without understanding, thrilled by the sudden excitement. Trevor exhaled like he had been holding his breath for weeks. My sister leaned over and hugged me, arms tight and desperate around my shoulders. Thank you, you saved us again, I swear I will pay you back. Her voice vibrated near my ear, heavy with promises that already sounded thin. I patted her back stiff because I did not trust myself to answer. She pulled away, wiping at her eyes with the side of her hand. I could feel a clock start ticking somewhere inside my ribs. The first crack showed up that same night during dinner. My niece refused to sit next to Trevor and chose my chair instead. He tried to joke and lean over, asking her about cartoons and toys. She responded by turning her face toward my shoulder and staying silent. His jaw flexed once, then he laughed in the strained, brittle way. Later, when she finally fell asleep in her crib, I passed their room. I heard low voices through the half-closed door, sharp and uneven. You have to bond with her or this will never work, my sister hissed. She is glued to him, what do you want me to do? He snapped back. I stood there breathing slowly, listening to a future crack straight down the center. I wish I could say I walked away and minded my business. Instead, I knocked on the door like an idiot referee. They both went quiet, then my sister opened with a strained smile. We were just talking about schedules, nothing serious, everything is fine. Behind her, Trevor avoided my eyes while folding and unfolding a t-shirt. Weeks blurred but not in a soft way, more like a grind. Trevor bounced between odd jobs, always one interview away from a breakthrough. My sister napped often, complained her back hurt, blamed stress and pregnancy. I picked up extra shifts and still rushed home in time for bedtime routines. At night, when the apartment finally went quiet, the weight of it pressed down. One evening, I walked in and found my niece in my bed again. She had dragged her blanket over and curled near my pillow. Why are you in here, Munchkin? I asked, flipping the light low. She pointed toward the wall that separated our room from theirs. They yell, she whispered, eyes round, voice small, like the word itself was dangerous. The arguments grew sharper as the due date crawled closer. Money, chores, whose turn it was to pick up something essential. I found job flyers tossed in the trash that clearly were not mine. He complained there were no good opportunities around, and everyone was unfair. Every excuse sounded like an echo of things I had already heard before. Then came the night my sister's water broke while I was washing dishes. She doubled over near the table and grabbed the edge with one hand. Hospital, she gasped, face pale, breathing in short bursts. Trevor ran in circles, grabbing random stuff and panicking out loud. I called an ambulance because waiting for his plan felt like a risk. At the hospital, they rushed her away and left us in the corridor. My niece clung to my side, half asleep, overwhelmed by the noise. Trevor paced, cursing under his breath, checking his phone every few seconds. Hours dragged, filled with vending machine coffee and quiet resentment. When a nurse finally called his name, he bolted after her without looking back. I kept my niece entertained with games, counting tiles and guessing names. Truth is, I was stalling my own fear along with hers. I had already lived through one disappearing act my body remembered. When my sister finally reappeared, she was on a gurney holding a bundle. Her eyes were red and wild, and I could not read them at all. Meet your nephew, she breathed, shifting the baby so I could see. He squirmed in the blanket, tiny hands poking free and grasping air. My niece stared at him, then at her mother, unsure what to feel. Trevor was nowhere in sight, which my brain filed under not ideal. I saw the question forming, dark and heavy, before anyone voiced it. Where is he? I asked, even though I already knew something was off. She looked away toward the doorway, jaw clenched tight. He went to grab some stuff, she answered, fingers tightening on the blanket. Wallet, clothes, charger, he will be right back. The last part landed flat, like even she could hear how weak it sounded. Hours turned into visiting staff changing shifts, but Trevor never showed. Texts stayed unread, calls went straight to voicemail after one dull ring. My sister kept defending him, each excuse thinner than the one before. Maybe his phone died, maybe he got stuck, maybe he lost service. Her voice cracked on that last maybe, and she bit her lip hard. By the second day, the nurses started asking polite but pointed questions. Will the father be coming to sign anything? Is someone picking you up? My sister snapped at them once, then apologized, then cried quietly. My niece grew restless, tugging at my arm, asking when we go home. I had no answer that did not feel like a lie wrapped in hope. Eventually, discharge time arrived. D, ready or not? A nurse handed me forms and watched who actually took responsibility. My sister stared at the bag of baby supplies like it was impossible. I cannot carry all this, she muttered, eyes wet, shoulders slumped. She looked at me then, and I knew what was coming before she spoke. Can we go with you just for a little while until I figure things out? She shifted the newborn toward me, as if testing his weight in my arms. My niece wrapped her fingers in my sleeve and tugged toward the elevator. I could feel the trap closing again, soft and slow and unavoidable. Every sensible part of me screamed to stop, and my hands still reached. The baby was warm and light, breathing fast against my chest. He did not know any of this, not the fights, not the missing father. He only knew the heartbeat closest to his ear and the way he was held. I adjusted my grip, supporting his head the way the nurse had shown. That simple motion felt too familiar for someone meeting their second surprise child. On the ride home, my niece sat beside me clutching a stuffed toy. My sister stared out the window, silent, phone dark in her pocket. She did not try to call Trevor again the entire drive. I watched the road and tried not to picture 3 different futures at once. Every mile felt like I was hauling someone else's unpaid debt. When we walked back into my place, the air felt tighter than before. Crib, high chair, bottles, little stacks of clothes, all already there for one. My niece climbed onto the couch like it was her throne, watching closely. I laid the newborn in my arms down for the first time. The room went quiet in that heavy way that comes before a storm. The knock that changed everything came right in the middle of chaos. My niece was chasing my toddler nephew in circles around the couch. He had a sock in his fist and thought it was a trophy. Give that back, I called out, already half laughing, half exhausted. The knock came again, steady and official, and my stomach went tight. Freeze, I held up a hand and both kids actually stopped. My nephew fell on his butt and started giggling for no reason. I headed to the door, wiping my palms on my jeans once. Some part of me expected my sister to magically stand there again. Instead, a woman with a folder and a calm face waited outside. Alexander, she checked a paper and lifted her eyes toward mine. Yeah, my throat felt dry, though nothing bad had happened yet. She showed me an ID badge and introduced herself from Child Services. I stepped aside on instinct while my brain screamed not to. The kids peeked around my legs and turned the whole visit real. Can we talk for a few minutes? She asked, voice very gentle. I have some questions about the children living here with you. The word children landed heavier than it should have in that moment. My nephew crawled forward and grabbed my ankle like he owned it. Snack, he demanded, completely killing any chance to fake calm. She watched that with a small nod, like she was noting evidence. Go sit at the table, I told them, keeping my tone even. We will talk about snacks in a second, go on now. My niece dragged her brother away by the sleeve with clear authority. The worker stepped inside and closed the door with a quiet click. She sat while I stayed standing because my knees would not cooperate. How did we end up on your radar? I asked, trying for steady. School records, medical forms, several things all together, she replied, hands folded neatly. You are listed as emergency contact and day-to-day caregiver everywhere. She lifted the folder slightly, and that small movement made me sweat. I knew about the school forms, of course, I filled them out. I knew the clinic papers where they asked who to call first. I had not realized every box I checked built a pattern somewhere. Is something wrong with their files? I forced the words out slowly. The idea of hidden danger inside paperwork made my skin buzz. Nothing is wrong with them, she answered, eyes soft but very sharp. We just noticed their mother is never the one bringing them anywhere. My niece called from the kitchen, asking if she could color now. 1 minute, I called back, then met the worker's gaze again. She has not been around much, I admitted, already hearing the understatement. How long has it been since she stayed here overnight? The woman asked. That question hit harder than I expected because I had to count. I do not know exactly, I started, then stopped and forced myself honest. Month and a half, maybe 2, she drops in sometimes and disappears. Saying it out loud made me sound like an idiot who never noticed. The worker nodded once and made a note in her folder calmly. Have you been solely responsible for their meals and daily supervision? Yes, that answer came too fast because there was nothing to dodge. My hands flexed against my sides, wanting something to haul. Do or fix? I realized there was nothing to fix here except my own denial. From the kitchen came a loud crash followed by immediate silence. I moved toward it out of habit and she followed without asking. My niece stood over a fallen cup, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. I am sorry, I did not mean to, she blurted, shoulders hunched. My nephew watched from a chair, swinging his legs, completely unconcerned. It is fine, accidents happen, I told her, reaching for a towel. The worker watched me clean and then watched the kids watch me. Who do you live with? She asked my niece in a soft voice. The girl pointed at me without hesitation, then grabbed my wrist. Just us here, she added, like that explained everything important. Who helps when you feel sick? The woman continued, still gentle. You take me to the doctor, my niece answered, eyes on me. And when you get scared at night, who do you run to? She did not even think about it, just wrapped both arms around my waist. Alex, she said, like it was the most obvious thing on earth. The worker thanked her and turned back toward me with a look. Not judgment exactly, more like confirmation of something she already suspected. Do you have any legal paperwork granting you authority over them? I already knew the answer to that and hated how empty it sounded. Nothing official, I just stepped up when their mom did not. She breathed out slowly and opened her folder again with careful movements. That is exactly why I am here today, she explained, eyes steady. Right now, if something serious happens, you technically have no rights. She let that hang between us while my mind ran through worst cases. Hospitals, schools, all the places that could turn us away with rules. I signed for everything already, I argued, sounding defensive even to myself. They know me, the teachers, the nurse, everyone, they recognize my face. She did not flinch, just listened while I tried to make that enough. Informal arrangements work until they do not, she replied, still in that calm tone. All it takes is one person double-checking and things unravel fast. I wanted to push back, to say she was overreacting, exaggerating maybe. But deep down I remembered every time I prayed no one asked questions. Like when they wanted a second contact and I wrote my number twice. Or when a receptionist asked about their mom and I laughed it off. Those tiny moments suddenly lined up into one long, ugly pattern. The worker slid a different set of papers across my kitchen table. This is temporary guardianship, not adoption, responsibilities without removing her entirely. The pages sat there between us like they were hot, daring me. If their mother returns consistently and proves stability, this can be revisited. She tapped the signature line lightly, then folded her hands away from it. Hearing words like stability from a stranger in my kitchen messed me up. Part of me wanted to protect my sister from being labeled anything. Another part remembered my niece sleeping in my bed because of shouting. Remembered my nephew counting on my fingers to fall asleep some nights. Those memories were louder than my loyalty, even if I hated that. Do you have to open some case if I refuse this? I asked. She looked down at the forms, then back at me with honesty. If we cannot confirm consistent care, we might need extra steps. Extra steps, I repeated, already seeing rooms with strangers and shared toys. My niece tugged on my shirt again, sensing the shift without understanding it. Are we in trouble? She whispered, eyes glossy, chin tilted up. No, I told her, though it felt like a half-truth at best. You are not in trouble, grown-ups are trying to sort grown-up stuff. She studied the worker, then me, then wrapped her arms around my leg again. That small grip pulled harder than any official warning or threat. The woman watched all of that without interrupting, just taking mental notes. I am not here to break your family, she added, voice low. I am here because, on paper, these kids look like they drift. That word hit me right under the ribs because drifting sounded too familiar. I knew exactly what it felt like to float without anyone claiming you. She asked for my sister's contact information, and I handed over my phone. Calls went straight to voicemail, 3 times in front of both children. Her outgoing message chirped about leaving a message and blessings and love. I hung up and felt my ears burn with equal parts shame and anger. The worker wrote down the call times, documenting each empty ring like evidence. We will try to reach her through our channels as well, she explained. In the meantime, the reality is that you are acting as parent. I hated how right that sounded because it made this whole thing real. I also hated how much I wanted someone to acknowledge that out loud. Apparently, validation and fear can sit in the same chair. Pretty easily. She stood and asked to see where the kids slept and played. They led the way, proud to show off their room and things. My niece held up her favorite worn book like it was a treasure. My nephew pointed at the crib and announced, I belong there, that one. The worker smiled politely, but her eyes looked heavier with each detail. Back at the table, the forms still waited, untouched, accusing almost. I can leave these for you to review, she offered, voice patient. I know it is a big step and not something to rush. Leaving them would mean days of imagining every nightmare she had hinted at. Signing now would lock me into a role everyone assumed I already played. In that moment, I thought about who would actually feel the impact. Not my sister, not really, she was barely orbiting our lives anymore. If something happened tomorrow, it would be these two facing strangers. Some tired judge squinting at files, trying to decide where they belonged. That picture made my fingers move toward the pen before my brain agreed. I picked it up and my hand trembled just enough to notice. Once I sign, what changes immediately? I asked, looking up again. You gain authority to consent for medical and educational needs, she answered quietly. You also take formal responsibility for their well-being, which you already shoulder. It sounded like a promotion given to someone who had been doing double shifts. I signed anyway, full name, date, each loop harsher than the last. It felt like betraying my sister and protecting her kids at the same time. If that sounds twisted, welcome to the inside of my head back then. The worker watched but did not smile, just nodded once with something like respect. She added her own signature and sealed the papers with a firm press. Thank you for cooperating, she said, gathering everything back into her folder. We will still try to reach their mother and keep you updated. The kids hovered in the doorway, waiting to see if she would take them. She knelt to their level and told them she was glad they were safe. Safe, that word sat in the air long after the door closed behind her. My niece tugged my sleeve again once we were alone in the kitchen. What did you write on the paper? She asked, eyes searching mine. I crouched so we were face to face and she could see everything. I wrote that I am in charge of you two, officially now. She thought about that for a second, then hugged my neck hard. My nephew joined the pile, wrapping his arms around my shoulders from behind. Does that mean you never leave? My niece whispered into my ear. That question sliced through every stupid hope I still held for my sister. I swallowed hard and answered the only way I could in that moment. I am not going anywhere, I promised long before I knew the cost. The notification tone sliced through the living room while the kids wrestled. My nephew had my socks stretched over his hand like a puppet. My niece yelled at him to stop, clutching the remote like a weapon. Both of you chill, I said, reaching for my phone on instinct. A stranger's name filled the screen with a profile picture that looked familiar. The man in the photo had my niece's eyes and the same stubborn mouth. I swear my chest actually stalled for a second when I saw that. The message preview read, "Hey, I think we need to talk about something important." I opened it before I could talk myself out of it. Under his name it said, I believe I might be your niece's biological father. My first reaction was ugly laughter that came out way too loud. Both kids stopped fighting and stared like I had lost my mind. It's fine, keep playing, I told them, forcing my voice steady again. They went back to their argument, still watching me from the corner. On the screen, another message bubble popped up like he sensed hesitation. I did not know she existed until recently. I am not trying drama. The words crawled across my vision while my pulse banged in my ears. Part of me wanted to throw the phone in a drawer and forget. Another part zoomed in on the photo again, noting that same crooked smile. I hate how fast my brain started comparing dates and possibilities. I typed erased, then typed again because everything sounded wrong. Where did you get my info? Was all I finally sent back. His reply came quick, like he had been waiting glued to the screen. Old friend of your sister recognized the kid from a picture online. He added, she mentioned you were the one raising her now. I felt exposed in my own place, like someone had cracked the walls. How do you know she is yours? I asked, fingers tight on the phone. Your sister told me years ago she was pregnant, then disappeared overnight. He wrote that he had been told she lost the baby soon after. Finding that photo felt like getting hit with a truck, he finished. My niece tugged my sleeve, oblivious, asking if we could have pizza. I muttered, eyes locked on the messages like they might explode. Looking back, I realized I wanted this guy to be lying. If he lied, I got to stay the only father figure around. The problem was, the resemblance on that screen would not cooperate. I told him we could not involve the child yet, not immediately. She is stable here, I am not throwing a stranger at her. He answered with, I get that, can we at least meet first? He suggested a public place and offered to show ID and everything. That detail told me he understood why I did not trust him. I did something smart for once and called the caseworker. Her number sat in my contacts under a boring official label. I got a message from a man claiming he is her father, I said. My voice dropped without meaning to, like the kids might overhear anyway. Do not panic, walk me through exactly what he said, she answered. I read parts of the conversation out loud while pacing near the hallway. She listened, occasionally asking small things like his name and location. Do not promise access, do not send photos, keep everything in writing, she advised. If you decide to meet, go alone first and keep it documented. Her tone carried zero surprise, which somehow rattled me even more. I met him 2 days later in a cheap coffee place near work. He stood when I walked in, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Up close, the resemblance hit harder, same chin as my niece, same eyebrows. That recognition twisted something sharp in me I did not want to name. Thanks for coming, he said quietly, fingers tapping the side of his cup. I sat across from him and folded my arms to keep steady. I am here to protect her, not to make anyone feel better. He nodded and did not argue, which threw me off balance fast. I deserve the bad opinion, he admitted, looking straight at the table. But if she is mine, I want to know and contribute. We talked timelines and cities, not feelings, because feelings would derail everything. He described meeting my sister briefly, short fling, messy exit, the usual chaos. He found out about the pregnancy right before she cut all contact clean. By the time I tracked mutual friends, they said it was over, he said. I tried to move on, then I saw that picture last month. I grilled him harder than any boss interview I have ever done. What if this flips her whole world and you bail again? I asked. His jaw tightened, but he did not look away or get defensive. Then I would be the worst version of myself possible, he answered. That is exactly why I messaged you instead of just showing up. He wanted a test, something official, something that would remove doubt. I told him that was above my pay grade, legally speaking at least. I have guardianship, not ownership, I reminded him, feeling the word sting. I will check what I am allowed to agree to without her mother. He nodded and slid a business card across the table for later. When I got home, my niece was building a tower with her brother. She glanced up at me first, like she always did, quiet but checking. Where were you? She asked, not accusing, just genuinely curious. Meeting someone from work, I lied, hating how easily it rolled out. I knew that lie would not last long, but I used it anyway. A week passed with steady, respectful messages from him every few days. He sent updates about talking to a lawyer, not threats, just information. He kept saying he did not want to blow up her life. He also kept slipping in little lines like, "Tell her someone out there cares." That one dug under my skin because it implied I was not enough. I finally agreed to a short supervised visit in a public park. The caseworker gave cautious approval as long as I stayed present. We told my niece she was meeting one of her mom's old friends. I know that sounds awful written down now, but I needed a buffer. Kids pick up more than we admit, and I was already stretched thin. He arrived early and waited on a bench, hands clasped, bouncing one knee. When she ran toward the playground, she slowed near him instinctively. He stood up and greeted us with a small, unsure smile. "Hi," he told her, voice rough, "I am a friend of your family." She glanced at me before answering, like she wanted permission to respond. They kicked a ball back and forth while I hovered a few steps away. He asked simple things, favorite cartoons, favorite food, zero heavy topics. She warmed up faster than I wanted, laughing when he pretended to trip. At one point she called, "Hey Alex, look," and my chest loosened slightly. Then she slipped and almost called him something else, then bit it back. I caught the moment, the way his face shifted when she nearly said Dad. He covered it with a soft smile, but the flash of pain was obvious. In that instant, I saw two versions of her future collide. One where he stepped in and earned that title slowly. Another where he turned out like every Oz. Our adult who left. The visit ended without drama, which somehow made it worse. He thanked me, told her goodbye, promised they would hang out again. She waved, a little confused, asking later, "How do we know him?" "Complicated friend," I answered, hating myself for the vagueness in every word. She frowned like she knew I was hiding something that would matter later. I thought that was the hardest part until the other father appeared. It happened on a Thursday night after bedtime, when the apartment felt fragile. I was rinsing dishes while the kids dozed down the hallway. Then someone slammed a fist into the front door hard enough to rattle it. The sound froze me in place because it was anger, not a knock. "Open up, I know you are in there," a male voice roared. I wiped my hands on my shirt and moved toward the entrance slowly. The pounding continued, each hit closer together, louder, more desperate. I cracked the door on the chain and saw my nephew's father swaying. His eyes were glassy and wild, and he reeked of bad decisions. "You are the brother," he snapped, trying to peer past the gap. "Where is my boy? I came to take him home tonight." He braced one arm against the frame like he owned the place. Behind me, I heard small feet hit the hallway floor at once. My niece whispered my name from the shadows, voice shaky and thin. "You need to leave, he is asleep, you are not coming inside like this." My voice came out lower than usual, controlled but barely holding. "That is my son, you do not get to block me," he shouted. His hand slammed the wood right next to my face, rattling the chain. My niece flinched hard, pressing herself flat against the wall out of sight. "Lower your voice," I warned, glancing back toward the kid's room. He leaned closer, breath sour, eyes locked on mine with open hatred. "You turned her against me, you kept him away, you stole my life." Every sentence hit like a push, even though he had not crossed yet. I realized my hands were shaking, but my stance stayed glued to the floor. He yanked at the chain once, testing how solid it was. For a second I pictured it snapping and him storming down the hallway. I saw my nephew half asleep, confused, dragged into a stranger's arms. That picture did something sharp and cold inside my head. "Back up now or I call the police," I told him plainly. He laughed, this harsh broken sound that carried through the hallway. "Go ahead, tell them you kidnapped my kid with some paperwork trick." Spit sprayed near the opening as he leaned even closer. "You think a judge cares about some uncle playing house," he snarled. Behind him, a neighbor's door cracked open, watching in wary silence. My niece edged closer until she could grip the back of my shirt. Her fingers pinched the fabric hard enough to hurt, anchoring herself to me. I could feel her shaking through each small contact point on my spine. She whispered, "Is that his father?" like the word itself hurt her mouth. I did not answer because anything I said would make it worse. My nephew started crying from his room, high and panicked. The sound cut through the argument like a knife on already raw nerves. The man outside heard it too and went nearly frantic. "That is him, I hear him, let me in right now," he bellowed. He kicked the bottom of the door and the frame shuddered under my hand. I dialed with my free hand, thumb hitting the emergency number automatically. I gave the dispatcher my address and brief details in short clipped bursts. While I talked, he kept hurling accusations about child support and loyalty. None of it matched reality, but his rage did not care about accuracy. The kids heard every word, and that is what still makes me sick. Blue lights finally washed across the window, turning the tension sharper. The man stepped back, arms spread, trying to look innocent suddenly. Officers approached with practiced caution, asking him to calm down and explain. He pointed at my door and shouted that I was keeping his son. They separated us, one talking to me while two spoke with him. I told them about guardianship, about his disappearance since the hospital day. One officer listened, while checking the system for any existing notes. My niece clung to my leg the whole time, eyes locked on the scene. When they asked if I felt threatened, the answer came out quick and rough. "Yes, especially with the children here," I said, not softening anything. They escorted him away eventually, not arrested, but removed for the night. He kept yelling that this was not over, that he would be back. The hallway slowly emptied, but the words hung in the air. I closed the door and double-locked it, hands finally losing their steadiness. Behind me, the kids watched my every move like their lives depended on it. My nephew climbed into my arms without asking and buried his face. My niece stood a step away, eyes glossy, jaw clenched so hard. "Was that really his dad, S?" he asked again, voice barely audible. I nodded once because lying after that display felt impossible. She swallowed and whispered, "Dads are scary," like she had learned a rule. I wanted to argue, to say not all, to fix it instantly. But the image burned into her brain that night did not care. All she had seen was a man shouting and pounding and threatening. The gentle guy from the park could not compete with that in her memory. In her world now, father meant someone who might tear the door down. Later, after they finally fell asleep, my phone lit up again. It was the first father, the quiet one, asking how she was doing. He wrote, "Whenever you feel ready, I am still here." I stared at that sentence with the sound of earlier yelling still echoing. Between those two men, I realized I was the wall and the doorway. I tore the envelope open over the sink and almost ripped the letter. The heading said Family Court in big, unfriendly letters that hit like a punch. Both kids were arguing in the hallway about who owned which backpack. I read the first line twice before it really landed in my brain. It was a notice for a custody hearing with my name all over it. It listed my niece, my nephew, my sister, and both fathers in bold. Seeing all four adults on one sheet made the whole mess look official. My hands went damp and the paper shook just enough to annoy me. "Alex, he took my markers," my niece shouted, stomping toward the kitchen. I folded the letter fast and tucked it behind my back like contraband. "Give them back," I snapped, way sharper than needed, voice echoing hard. Both kids froze, eyes wide, like I had thrown something across the room. I forced my tone down, told them to go finish homework instead. They shuffled away, glancing back at my face, sensing a storm coming. I pulled the letter out again, feeling that same storm inside my chest. I dialed the caseworker before I even finished the second page. She picked up on the second ring, voice steady like always, which helped. "I got a court notice," I said, reading out the case number slowly. She already knew about it, of course, they always do before you. "This is a full review of placement and parental rights," she explained carefully. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked, even though I kind of knew. "You triggered mandatory review when police responded to the last incident," she answered. Her words lined up images of that night like clips I did not want. "The court has to look at the whole picture now," she added. "Your role, the father's, your sister, everything on record, everything recent." I leaned against the counter and stared at the chipped drawer handle. "Tell me straight," I said, because I could not handle soft edges. "Can they take them from me? Is that actually possible here?" There was a pause, just long enough to make my heart stumble once. "They will decide what is safest long-term, nothing is automatic," she replied. That answer did not comfort me at all, but at least it was honest. Both fathers have been contacted, she continued in that steady, measured voice. One filed to formally establish rights, the other was notified of concern. And my sister, I asked, even though the dread was already there. She requested counsel and said she wants her children back, the worker said. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long beat. Then my phone buzzed again with a number I had not saved. Pick up, please pick up, a voice begged the second I answered. It was my sister, sounding raw and frantic and way too familiar. They are trying to say I abandoned them, you cannot let that stand. I walked into the bedroom and shut the door with my foot. The kids were still muttering in the hallway, but they stayed away. You disappeared for months, I reminded her, not raising my voice yet. I did the day-to-day, they have me listed as primary caregiver everywhere. I know, she rushed, words tumbling fast, breath uneven. I was getting clean, I was trying to fix myself first, she insisted. Rehab rules, no contact for a while, it was part of the program. That hit hard because it sounded both reasonable and extremely late. You could have told me something, I said, fingers pressing into my forehead. One message, anything, instead I had strangers asking what I was doing. They said contact would distract me, I was a mess, I would relapse, she said. I could hear traffic behind her, cars rushing past, some horn blaring. I am working now, I got a place, I am not the same. She stopped, then added quieter, I want to be their mother again. That last line dug deep and twisted around the part of me still loyal. You are still on the papers, I told her, trying to stay grounded. The judge will listen, nobody erased you, I did not erase you. But you signed for them, they keep saying you are the stable one, she snapped. Jealousy leaked through every word, coating them in something else. Harp and sour. You have to help me, you cannot sit there acting neutral. Neutral, that word almost made me laugh, bitter and too loud. I take them to school, to doctors, I handle all the bills, I said. My voice shook now, anger and fear fighting for first place. They call me when they are sick, when they wake up scared, when everything breaks. If that looks stable, it is because I earned every inch of it. Silence stretched between us like a rope, both ends burning slowly. When she spoke again, her voice had softened into that pleading tone. I know what I did, I am not pretending it was fine, she whispered. But do not stand there and say you did not resent me too. You liked being the hero, admit it, you liked being their everything. And the worst part is, she was not entirely wrong about that. There is a twisted pride in being the one they run to. I am not proud of that feeling, but it lives in me. It makes choices harder because you never know which part is selfish. I took a breath and told her, we let the court decide now. You are really going to hide behind a judge, she snapped immediately. Her voice jumped back to angry, quick like flipping a switch. They are family, not furniture, you do not need some stranger's permission. You opened this door when you walked out, I answered, losing patience. If you want them back, you show proof, not speeches to me. She hung up on me after that, no goodbye, no agreement. The silence in the room felt heavier than the whole conversation. I knew that fight would replay in the courtroom, just louder and colder. For now, I shoved my phone in my pocket and went back out. Both kids stared at me like I had grown a second head. Are we in trouble? My niece asked, hugging her backpack to her chest. Her brother mirrored her without understanding, copying her worried face almost exactly. I crouched down so we were on the same level again. You are not in trouble, grown-ups are sorting grown-up things, I said slowly. I could hear my own voice from months ago, and it sounded thinner now. A few days later, the first father came over at my request. He stepped inside carefully, like he did not want to spook anyone. My niece peeked from the hall and then bolted straight into the kitchen. She knew I had invited someone, but not who he really was. His hands were empty and shaking, so he shoved them into his pockets. Thanks for seeing me here, he said, glancing around, taking it all in. This is their home, I answered, watching his face while I said it. The words were not an accident, they were a small test. He nodded, eyes lingering on the kids' drawings taped to the fridge. I am not here to rip them out of that, he replied. We sat at the table while the kids watched from the doorway. They whispered to each other, trying to figure out who he might be. You got the court letter too? I asked, even though I knew. Yeah, he breathed, rubbing his thumb over the edge of his phone. I hired counsel. They recommended establishing paternity on record officially. The way he said it made my stomach tighten again, but I understood. If you are biologically connected, the system listens differently, he added. I want rights, but I am not trying to strip yours away. He looked me straight in the eye while saying that, which helped. She only knows one father figure, I reminded him, tipping my head toward the hall. I know, he replied, gaze dropping for a second, voice low and rough. I am the idiot who let that happen by doing nothing years ago. He swallowed hard and continued, I cannot change that gap, but I can show up now. There was no dramatics in his tone, which made it easier to hear. Honest regret sits different from wild excuses, you feel it in your ribs. We set a date for the test at a clinic downtown. I told the kids it was a routine check for all of us. They grumbled about needles, but perked up when I promised treats after. At the clinic, he waited in the lobby when we walked in. My niece spotted him and waved without hesitation, which hurt more than I expected. She sat on my lap while the nurse took a small sample. He watched from the opposite chair, hands locked together, jaw tight. My nephew played with a worn toy, humming to himself quietly. To them, it was just another weird adult errand with snacks at the end. To us, it was a door that would not close once opened. When the results came back, the caseworker called me instead of mailing them. Her voice carried that careful tone that says everything before the words do. It confirms biological paternity for your niece, she told me, no pause. I closed my eyes and listened to my heartbeat speed up. This will be presented at the hearing, along with current caregiving facts. I thanked her and hung up, then just stood in the hallway. The kids were in the next room arguing over a puzzle piece. Part of me felt relief because at least one man anteed in. Another part felt this nasty sting of jealousy I am not proud of. The universe had handed her another option, and I liked being the only one. The other father reached out once before the hearing, totally different tone. His message came late at night, too many words, some misspelled. They cannot keep my boy from me, I was just upset, he wrote. He blamed stress, blamed money, blamed me, blamed the whole system. He ended with, tell the judge I am trying, or I swear I will fight dirty. I did not answer that one, not even a single line. I saved the message and forwarded it to the caseworker the next morning. She replied that it would be added to the file as context. I felt guilty for that for about 30 seconds, then pictured the kids. I pictured that night at the door, and the guilt shut up fast. The week before court, my niece started waking up earlier than usual. She would climb into my bed and lie there staring at the ceiling. You are thinking too loud, I teased once, brushing hair off her forehead. She rolled onto her side and studied my face, serious and older. If the judge likes mom more, do we go with her? She asked. There it was, the question I had been dodging even in my own head. I swallowed and picked my next sentence like it weighed 100 pounds. The judge is supposed to do what is best for you both, I answered. She frowned, not happy with that careful wording, not satisfied at all. What if they think best means away from you? She whispered. I did not give her a clever reply, there was none available. Instead, I pulled her closer and spoke right into her hair. I will fight for you until I drop, I told her, voice tight. That does not guarantee anything, I wanted to add, but I swallowed it. She nodded against my chest like that promise was enough to breathe again. On the morning of the hearing, both kids dressed without arguing once. That alone told me how scared they were about the whole thing. My nephew demanded the shirt with dinosaurs because it was lucky. My niece stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down her skirt. Do I look like someone a judge would listen to? She asked quietly. You look like someone who tells the truth, I answered, tightening her shoes. That is the only thing that matters today, no performances, just honesty. We ate quick, none of us finishing, nerves chewing more than our mouths did. On the ride there, the car stayed mostly quiet except for small questions. Do we talk first or last? Do they have snacks? Can I sit next to you? Court buildings always feel colder than regular places, and this one was worse. We checked in, went through security, waited in a long, echoing hallway. The caseworker spotted us and walked over, clipboard in hand, expression serious. She crouched so she could talk to the kids at their height. Today you answer questions from grown-ups, you do not have to pick sides, she reminded. My niece nodded hard like she was signing a contract with her whole body. My nephew stared at the floor and squeezed my fingers until they hurt. I asked her quietly if both fathers had arrived yet. One is here with his counsel, the other is running behind, she replied. Her eyes flicked toward the waiting area, and I followed her glance. The first father sat alone on a bench, ties slightly crooked. He noticed us and stood right away, smoothing his shirt down. Hey, he greeted softly, not reaching out toward the kids yet. My niece waved and stayed glued to my side, torn between comfort and curiosity. My nephew pressed his face into my hip and refused to look up. Big day, the man murmured to me, trying for a half smile. That is one way to put it, I answered, mouth dry as dust. We give our sides, they choose, we deal with whatever comes. He looked over at my niece, eyes glossy. For a second he blinked away. Whatever happens, thank you for not shutting me out, he added. I could not tell if I regretted that choice yet, to be honest. Before I could respond, my sister walked around the corner with her counsel. She looked sharper, cleaner, more put together than the last time I saw. Her eyes flicked from the kids to me to the first father. Her jaw tightened, and I knew this hallway was about to get rough. You invited him, she said, voice low but loaded with heat. The kids went still, watching, shoulders rising like they sensed a fight. He has paperwork now, I answered, keeping my tone even and quiet. We all do, that is why we are here today. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to yell but swallowed it for the moment. She turned to the kids and pulled on that familiar bright smile. Hey babies, you look so grown, I missed you like crazy, she cooed. My niece walked forward slowly and hugged her, stiff but sincere. My nephew followed, more out of habit than joy, clinging to my sleeve. I watched all three and felt my insides twist in 7 different directions. The second fat. Her rushed in late, eyes bloodshot, shirt untucked, out of breath. He spotted us and strode over, ignoring the staff trying to guide him. There they are, he announced loudly, like this was some happy reunion. My nephew shrank behind me, so fast it physically hurt to watch. Court security stepped closer, picking up on the tension instantly without words. Keep your voice down, one officer warned, hand resting near his belt. The man lifted both palms and forced a crooked grin. Relax, I am just here to show the judge I care, he muttered. His gaze darted over to my sister, then to the first father. Whole crowd here for my boy, he added, tone bitter and mocking. They called our case, and the hallway emptied into the courtroom in pieces. We sat at separate tables, little islands divided by polished wood and rules. The kids were guided to a side area with a court advocate. I watched my niece take her brother's hand and pull him into a chair. She sat up straight, chin high, trying to look braver than she felt. The judge looked tired in that way people get from years of stories. He ran through the file summary while flipping pages with steady hands. 2 minors, current legal custody with maternal relative, parents petitioning for changes, he recited. Hearing our entire life boiled down like that made me feel weirdly small. Today we will consider long-term placement and visitation structures, he continued. The caseworker spoke first, outlining living arrangements and school attendance records. She mentioned the night officers came, the hospital forms, the guardianship signing. She described the kids as bonded and thriving in my care overall. She did not sugarcoat the stress either, mentioned my long hours and money strain. Her voice stayed neutral, but the facts were heavier than anything I could say. My sister took the stand next, walking up like she was heading to judgment. Her counsel asked about treatment programs and current employment and housing. She talked about clean tests, regular counseling, new routines she had built. When asked why she left them with me for so long, her voice shook. I thought they would be safer there while I fixed myself, she answered. Hearing that nearly broke me and pissed me off at the same time. Part of me understood the logic, the other part heard only abandonment. Her counsel pushed the narrative of a recovered parent trying to reunite. Opposing counsel pressed on missed calls and no updates in the vanishing act. Do you accept that your brother carried full responsibility during that period? They asked. She glanced at me then, eyes wet, chin trembling with real shame. Yes, she whispered, nodding once. He did everything I should have done. That admission landed in the room like a small explosion without smoke. It felt good to hear and bad to need at the same time. I realized I had waited years to hear her say exactly that. The first father went next, calmer than I expected under the lights. He spoke about the brief relationship, the pregnancy news, the sudden silence. He repeated how he was told there had been a loss. He looked straight at the judge when he talked about finding her photo. It felt like I had spent years grieving someone who was alive, he said. He laid out his job, his apartment, his support network, nothing flashy. He did not promise miracles, just steady involvement and financial help. I do not want to uproot her, he emphasized, palms open, voice rough. I want to be added to what she already has with her uncle. That sentence loosened something in my chest I had not realized was clenched. Opposing counsel tried to poke holes, asking why he did not search harder earlier. He did not dodge, did not blame anyone else, which mattered. I was young and selfish and believed what I was told, he answered. That does not excuse it, it just explains why I am so late. The judge watched him the entire time, face unreadable, pen tapping slowly. The second father went last, shoulders stiff, eyes darting around the room. His counsel tried to guide him, but he kept drifting off script. He minimized the night at my door, called it a misunderstanding after drinks. He claimed he had always intended to step up once work improved. When asked for steady proof of income, his answers got vague and defensive. They brought up his messages, including the one about fighting dirty. He tried to laugh it off, saying he was just venting out of frustration. Nobody in that room looked amused, not even his own counsel. The judge leaned forward slightly, voice cooler when he spoke to him. Your behavior around the home raises serious safety concerns, he said. Then it was my turn, and I honestly thought I might throw up. I walked up, swore to tell the truth, sat and tried not to shake. My counsel asked about daily routines more than feelings at first. I talked about school drop-offs, meals, bedtime rituals, doctor visits. It sounded boring out loud, but I knew that boring meant stable. Then they asked about the night with the drunk knock on my door. I felt my throat close up as I described the banging and yelling. I told them where the kids were standing, what they heard, what they saw. I admitted I had been scared, which is not easy for me. I also admitted I called for help fast, not trying to handle it alone. They asked about the first father visiting the park and the clinic. I told them I agreed because I did not want secrets around biology. I admitted I had mixed feelings, that I felt both grateful and threatened. These kids anchored their lives to me, I said, voice cracking a little. Letting someone else reach for that anchor scares me, even if he means well. Opposing counsel pressed on my work hours and financial strain. They asked if I had ever lost patience or raised my voice. Of course I have, I answered, not pretending to be a saint. I get tired and frustrated and make mistakes like any human. But I do not abandon them, and I do not scare them on purpose. Do you believe their mother loves them? One counsel asked suddenly. My first instinct was to say no, to paint her in black ink. Instead, I forced myself to answer honestly, even though it hurt. Yes, I said, I believe she loves them in a chaotic way. But love without consistency is a roller coaster, and they need ground. Do you want to block their fathers forever? Came the next question. I shook my head, shocked they even thought that was my angle. I want them surrounded by adults who show up and do no harm, I said. If these men can prove that over time, I will work with them. But I will not hand the kids over because someone shares their blood. Finally, the judge looked directly at me, no buffer, no filter. If these children had to choose where they slept tonight, where would that be? He asked. My mind flashed through every bed they had ever curled into. Every night my niece crawled into my room after nightmares. Every morning my nephew climbed onto my lap with bedhead and questions. With me, I answered, staring straight at him, no hesitation there. Not because I am perfect, but because that is home in their heads. My voice shook, but the words felt like they nailed something to the floor. The judge nodded once and wrote something down slowly. My heart rabbited against my ribs while the room watched that pen move. They recessed briefly so the court advocate could speak with the kids. We waited in the hallway again, tension thicker than any shared silence. My niece walked into the small side room with the advocate, holding her brother's hand. They were gone for what felt like an hour but was probably minutes. When they came out, my niece's eyes were red, but she stood tall. "What did you talk about?" I asked, keeping my voice low and gentle. She shrugged and wiped her cheeks quickly with the back of her hand. "They asked who makes breakfast and who helps with homework and stuff," she said. "Who do you run to when you're scared?" I asked, braced. She gave me a look like that was the world's dumbest question. "You," she answered, almost offended. "Who else would it be?" Then she hesitated and added, "I told them I love Mom, but I live with you." That line hit harder than anything said on the stand. It was simple, honest, and packed with more truth than any argument. I realized then that whatever happened, they had already made their own maps. We filed back in for the decision, each step heavier than the last. The judge went through his reasoning, each sentence another brick laid. He talked about stability and safety and existing bonds, all that careful language. He acknowledged my sister's efforts but flagged the length of her absence. He noted one father's cooperation and another's volatility, without dressing it up. In the best interests of the minors, he finally announced, legal and physical custody will remain with their maternal uncle. My ears buzzed so loud I almost missed the rest of it. He outlined visitation for my sister, supervised at first with conditions attached. He granted the first father-structured contact, building gradually over time. He restricted the second father's access to monitored visits pending proof of real change. By the time he finished, my hands were gripping the table edge hard. I looked over at the kids, and my niece was already watching me. She did not cheer or cry, she just breathed out like she had been holding air. My nephew smiled sleepily, not fully grasping the paperwork, just sensing relief. Across the room, my sister's shoulders folded in on themselves like she had been punched. When we stepped back into the hallway, she cornered me near the elevator. "You could have fought harder for shared custody," she hissed under her breath. Her eyes were wet, but underneath that there was accusation, bright and fierce. "You let them paint me as the villain while you played the martyr." I flinched because part of me knew I had not exactly stopped that. "I told the truth," I answered, voice tired, not angry this time. "I did not lie to hurt you, I just showed them our reality." She rubbed her face and laughed once in a harsh, broken way. "Congratulations, you won," she said, throwing her hands up, bitter and hurt. "You got the life, you got the kids, you got the gold star." Her words made something mean flicker inside me for a second. "Do you really think this feels like winning?" I snapped back, unable to stop. "I am exhausted, my savings are wrecked, my whole future is wrapped around 2 kids." I gestured toward the bench where they sat, kicking their feet nervously. "This is not a prize, it is a responsibility you left me holding." She stared at them for a long pause, eyes softening despite everything. "I wanted to come back different and take it all at once," she admitted. Like some big movie moment where they run into my arms again. She shook her head and wiped fresh tears away with the heel of her hand. "Instead, a stranger in a robe tells me I am on probation as a mother." That line almost broke me, I will not lie. Because under all the mess, she really was their mom, just a broken one. I stepped closer and lowered my voice so the kids could not hear. "You get your visits, you show up, you stay clean, you prove them wrong," I told her. "I will not stand in the way of that, but I will not undo today." "So you choose them over me?" she asked, eyes searching my face for doubt. The truth sat there heavy and undeniable, waiting to be spoken. I could have softened it, could have dodged, could have fed her ego. Instead, I forced myself to say the words straight, without fancy wrapping. "Yes," I answered, "if it comes down to you or them, I choose them." She stared at me like she did not recognize who she was talking to. Then she laughed again, this time more like a sob tearing loose. "You used to follow me everywhere when we were kids," she muttered. "Now you look at me like I am some storm you have to manage." She backed away before I could reply, walking down the hall alone. The first father approached us quietly after she left, not pushing in. He knelt near the bench where my niece was swinging her legs. "You okay?" he asked her, voice soft, eyes careful. She shrugged and leaned into my side, still processing everything. "That was a lot of grown-up talking," she muttered, clearly done with it. He smiled sadly and glanced up at me, waiting for some cue. I gave a small nod and stepped back half a pace, still close. "I am not going anywhere," he told her. "I will see you again soon." It was a simple promise, no big declarations, just a steady line. I watched her weigh that sentence like she was testing its strength. "Okay," she replied finally, "but do not shout at doors." It hit both of us at the same time what she meant. He looked confused for a second, then realized she was comparing him. "That is not my style," he answered, holding her gaze, not looking away. Something in her shoulders relaxed just a little at that. On the ride home, both kids were unusually quiet, which I let happen. Halfway there, my nephew piped up from the back seat. "Did we do something wrong? Is that why everyone was mad?" he asked. My hands tightened on the wheel, and I forced my voice steady. "You did nothing wrong. Grown-ups are fixing messes they made, not you." "And the judge picked you," my niece added, voice slow, still testing reality. "Yeah," I answered, feeling that verdict settle like extra weight on my shoulders. She looked out the window for a long minute, then turned back toward me. "Then you cannot ever leave like Mom did," she said. It sounded less like a request and more like a binding contract. I wanted to tell her I could get sick or hit by a bus. I wanted to teach her that nothing is guaranteed, that life is random. Instead, I swallowed all that dark honesty and chose something she could hold. "I am here," I told her, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "As long as I breathe, you have a home with me." Back at the apartment, everything looked exactly the same as we left it. Same shoes by the door, same backpacks, same half-finished puzzle on the table. The kids ran to their room like they had been holding their energy. I stood in the doorway and watched them check their stuff like it might vanish. Only then did I really understand how afraid they had been of losing it. That night, after teeth and stories and endless questions, they finally slept. I sat on the floor between their beds, back against the wall. The court order lay on the nightstand, edges already curling slightly. It named me as permanent caregiver with more authority than I ever wanted. It named their parents too, but with limits that would take years to repair. If you are looking for a neat ending, this is not that. Their mom still calls sometimes, still cancels sometimes, still tries, still falters. One father is learning how to be present without barging in. The other drifts on the edges under supervision, trying to get his act together. I stand in the middle, tired and proud and terrified and stubborn all at once. Every time my niece introduces me now, she uses the same phrase. "This is Alex," she tells new people. "He is the one who stayed." The first time I heard that, my throat closed up for a second. Because underneath the cute line, you can hear everything she has seen. That sentence is her verdict on all of us, carved by what we did.